Hi there. My name is Gail, and I'm 62 years old. For most of my adult life, I thought being a good mother meant putting everyone else's needs before my own. I spent decades believing that sacrifice was love, and love meant staying quiet when things didn't feel right. I raised my two children mostly alone after my husband passed 8 years ago, and I always prided myself on being the kind of mother who would do anything for her family. But sometimes the very people we love most can make us feel invisible in ways we never imagined possible. What I'm about to share with you happened just 6 months ago, and it changed everything I thought I knew about family respect and finding my voice when it matters most. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that like button if you've ever felt overlooked by your own family, and don't forget to subscribe because we're about to explore how one humiliating moment can open our eyes to years of subtle manipulation. 3 years ago, when my son Marcus first suggested I move in with his family, it felt like a blessing. At 35, he'd built a successful life with his wife Jessica and their two young children. But it was my daughter Emily who really needed me. At 30, Emily had been born with intellectual disabilities that required daily care and attention. She was the sweetest soul you'd ever meet, with a smile that could light up any room, but she needed help with basic tasks and couldn't live independently. Marcus had painted such a beautiful picture when he made his proposal. He said Emily would benefit from having her mother close by and that Jessica could use help with the grandchildren. He made it sound like I'd be the missing piece that would make their family complete. After years of living alone in my empty house, the idea of being needed again felt like a gift from heaven. I sold my small home and moved into their spacious colonial in the suburbs. They'd converted the guest room on the first floor for Emily, and I took the smaller bedroom upstairs. From day one, I threw myself into helping however I could. I cooked dinner every night, helped with laundry, picked up the kids from school, and most importantly, I spent hours with Emily. We'd work on puzzles together, watch her favorite shows, and I'd help her with the simple tasks that gave her such pride when she completed them. Emily had always been close to me. Even when she was little, I was the one who understood her needs best, who could calm her down during difficult moments, and who celebrated every small victory with her. Marcus had been a good brother, but he'd never had the patience for Emily's slower pace or repetitive questions. That's why his sudden interest in her care surprised me, though I attributed it to maturity and growth. For the first few months, everything seemed perfect. I felt useful again, like my life had purpose beyond just existing. Marcus would thank me regularly for all my help, and Jessica seemed genuinely grateful for the extra hands around the house. Emily was thriving with the additional attention and structure. I thought we'd found our ideal family arrangement. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, at first things began to shift. Marcus started making small comments about Emily's care that made me feel like I was overstepping somehow. He'd suggest that maybe she didn't need quite so much stimulation, or that perhaps I was encouraging her to be too social. When I'd mentioned taking Emily to visit friends from her old support group, he'd find reasons why it wasn't a good time. The excuses always sounded reasonable, caring even, but they left me with an uneasy feeling I couldn't quite identify. The first real crack in my contentment came during the kids' parent-teacher conference at school. I'd been looking forward to attending, having helped them with homework and school projects since I'd moved in. But the morning of the conference, Marcus pulled me aside with a gentle but firm request. "Mom, I think it would be better if you stayed home with Emily today," he said, adjusting his tie with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Jessica and I can handle the school meeting, and Emily gets anxious when her routine is disrupted. You're so good with her, and she needs that stability." The reasoning sounded logical, even thoughtful, but something inside me deflated. I'd been excited to meet the teachers, to be involved in my grandchildren's education. Still, I pushed down my disappointment and agreed. After all, Marcus was right about Emily's need for routine, and I was probably the best person to keep her calm and happy. A week later, Emily's longtime doctor made a house call for her regular checkup. Dr. Peterson had been seeing Emily for over 5 years, and I'd always been present for her medical appointments. I knew her health history, her medications, and the specific ways she communicated when something was bothering her. So when Marcus asked me to give them some space during the examination, I was genuinely confused. But I always help translate for Emily when she's trying to explain how she feels. I said, hovering near the living room where they'd set up for the appointment. Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder, his smile patient but unyielding. Mom, Dr. Peterson needs to assess Emily's independence too. Having you there might make her rely too much on your help instead of developing her own communication skills. Why don't you start dinner prep? We'll fill you in on everything afterward. I found myself walking toward the kitchen, my feet moving even as my mind resisted. The explanation made some sense, I supposed, but Emily had never shown signs of being overly dependent on me. If anything, our bond helped her feel secure enough to try new things. But I didn't want to cause problems or seem like I was questioning Marcus's judgment about his own sister's care. From the kitchen, I could hear muffled voices from the living room, but I couldn't make out the details of Emily's examination. When Dr. Peterson left 30 minutes later, Marcus gave me a brief summary that Emily was doing well and needed no changes to her routine. But something felt incomplete about his report, like important details had been left out. Jessica's reaction to these incidents puzzled me even more. When I mentioned feeling a bit excluded, she'd nod sympathetically, but then agree with Marcus's reasoning. He's just trying to help Emily become more independent, Gail. You're such a devoted mother sometimes, it's hard to step back and let others take the lead. Her words stung more than I cared to admit. Was I being overprotective? Had I somehow become a hindrance to Emily's development? The self-doubt crept in slowly, making me question instincts I trusted for 30 years of motherhood. Marcus seemed so confident, so sure of what was best for everyone, and I began to defer to his judgment more and more frequently. But late at night, when I'd hear Emily calling out for me from her room, asking why she couldn't come with us to certain places or see certain people anymore, I felt a growing unease that no amount of rational explanation could completely silence. The pattern became more pronounced over the following months, and my unease transformed into something sharper and more troubling. It started with the visit from Sarah Chen, Emily's social worker, from the County Disability Services. Sarah had been working with Emily for 3 years, helping coordinate her benefits and social programs. She'd always been thorough and kind, and Emily genuinely enjoyed their monthly check-ins. But when Sarah's appointment day arrived, Marcus suddenly discovered an urgent need for groceries. Mom, we're completely out of Emily's favorite cereal, and you know how upset she gets when her breakfast routine changes, he said, pressing a shopping list into my hands 20 minutes before Sarah was due to arrive. Could you run to the store quickly? This meeting will probably be pretty boring anyway, just paperwork stuff. The timing felt off, but Marcus's concern for Emily's breakfast routine wasn't unreasonable. Emily did have strong preferences about her morning meals. Still, as I drove to the supermarket, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being deliberately removed from an important conversation about my daughter's care. When I returned an hour later, Sarah was gone, and Marcus reported that everything had gone smoothly and nothing had changed in Emily's services. 2 weeks later, when Emily's former housemate from her previous group home called wanting to arrange a visit, I felt excited to reconnect her with old friends. Linda had lived with Emily for 2 years before Emily moved in with us, and they'd maintained a close friendship. Emily had been asking about Linda for months, wondering when she could see her again. But when I mentioned the phone call to Marcus, his reaction was swift and decisive. I don't think that's a good idea right now, Mom. Emily's finally settled into our routine here. Bringing people from her past might confuse her or make her want to leave. She's doing so well with the stability we've created. But she misses Linda, I protested, feeling a spark of my old assertiveness. She asks about her friends all the time. Social connections are important for her development. Marcus's expression hardened slightly, though his voice remained calm. Mom, with all due respect, I've been researching the latest approaches to caring for people with Emily's condition. Too much social stimulation can actually be overwhelming and counterproductive. Emily needs consistency and calm, not the chaos of trying to maintain relationships with people who can't provide the level of care she requires. Jessica nodded in agreement from across the room. Marcus has been reading a lot about this, Gail. Maybe we should trust his research and focus on what's best for Emily's long-term stability. The conversation left me feeling simultaneously guilty and frustrated. Was I being selfish in wanting Emily to maintain her friendships? Was I prioritizing my own desire for Emily to be social over her actual needs? But watching Emily's face fall when I had to tell her that Linda couldn't visit felt like a betrayal of everything I thought I knew about my daughter's happiness. As the weeks passed, I began noticing other concerning patterns. Marcus had started managing Emily's disability benefits, claiming it would be easier for household budgeting if everything went through one account. He'd also taken over scheduling all of Emily's appointments and activities, creating what he called a streamlined system that eliminated confusion. But the streamlined system seemed to eliminate most of Emily's outside contact as well. Her weekly art therapy sessions were deemed unnecessarily stimulating. Her monthly participation in a social skills group for adults with disabilities was replaced with quiet time at home. Even her regular walks around the neighborhood became restricted to times when Marcus could accompany us, which meant they happened less and less frequently. I started to feel like I was watching Emily's world shrink, and my own along with it. The woman who had once been the primary advocate and caregiver for her daughter was slowly being repositioned as a well-meaning but potentially harmful influence who needed to be managed and contained. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in late March, and it shattered every remaining illusion I'd been clinging to about our family dynamics. I'd been awake since 5, as had become my habit, checking on Emily and starting the coffee before the rest of the household stirred. Emily had been more excited than usual because she knew Nurse Patricia would be coming for her quarterly health assessment. Patricia Reynolds had been Emily's nurse specialist for 18 months, coordinating her medications and monitoring her overall well-being. Emily always looked forward to these visits because Patricia treated her with genuine respect and interest, asking about her activities and listening patiently to her sometimes wandering stories. It was one of the few times Emily still had direct interaction with a healthcare professional who knew her as an individual. I'd helped Emily choose her favorite blue sweater for the appointment and had prepared a list of questions about a new medication her doctor had prescribed. Emily had been having some sleep difficulties lately, and I wanted to make sure Patricia was aware of all the details. We'd spent the morning reviewing what Emily wanted to share about her activities and how she'd been feeling. At 9:45, 15 minutes before Patricia was scheduled to arrive, Marcus appeared in the kitchen, where Emily and I were finishing her breakfast. His expression was serious, almost businesslike, as he approached me. "Mom, I need you to go downstairs to the basement for a while," he said quietly, glancing toward Emily, who was humming happily over her toast. I looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean Patricia will be here soon for Emily's appointment?" "That's exactly why I need you to go downstairs," Marcus replied, his voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before. "I don't want Patricia to know you're living here. It's better if she thinks Emily's care is entirely managed by Jessica and me." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Marcus, what are you talking about? I'm Emily's mother. Of course I should be here for her medical appointment." "Mom, listen to me carefully," he said, stepping closer and lowering his voice further. "If social services thinks Emily has too many people involved in her care, they might decide our situation is unstable. They could recommend moving her to a facility or changing her benefits structure. Do you want Emily to be taken away from her family?" My hands began to tremble as the full implications of his request sank in. "You want me to hide in the basement like I don't exist, like I'm not Emily's mother?" "I want you to be smart about this," Marcus said firmly. Emily's benefits and housing situation are more secure if the officials see a simple, stable household. Too many cooks in the kitchen creates questions and complications we don't need. Emily looked up from her breakfast, sensing the tension in our voices, even if she couldn't follow the conversation entirely. Is Nurse Patricia coming soon? I want to show her my new puzzle. Yes, sweetheart, she'll be here soon, I said, my voice catching slightly. Then turning back to Marcus, I fought to keep my tone steady. I won't hide from Emily's nurse. This is my home too, and I'm her mother. Marcus's expression hardened completely. Mom, if you make this difficult, if you force me to explain to Patricia why you're being obstructive about Emily's care, it could jeopardize everything we've built here. Is your pride really more important than Emily's security? The threat was clear, even wrapped in concern for Emily's welfare. Jessica appeared in the doorway, drawn by our raised voices, and immediately sided with her husband. Gail, Marcus is just trying to protect Emily's best interests. Maybe it would be better if you just stayed out of sight for a little while. I felt trapped between my love for Emily and my growing realization that something was terribly wrong with this entire situation. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made the decision urgent. Patricia was arriving, and I had seconds to choose between causing a scene that might upset Emily or submitting to this humiliating demand. With my heart breaking, I walked toward the basement stairs, feeling like I was betraying not just myself but everything I'd ever stood for as Emily's mother. As I descended into the dim basement, I could hear Marcus greeting Patricia at the front door with warm enthusiasm, his voice full of the caring concern he'd somehow forgotten to show me. For the next 45 minutes, I sat in that basement, listening to the muffled sounds of conversation above me. I heard Patricia's professional but warm voice asking Emily questions about her health and daily routine. I heard Emily's excited responses, her joy at having someone new to talk to. And I heard Marcus presenting himself as Emily's primary caregiver, fielding Patricia's questions with confidence and authority. The most devastating moment came when I heard Emily ask, "Where is Grandma Gail? She helps me remember my medicines." Marcus's response cut through me like a knife. "Oh, Grandma Gail had to go visit some friends today. It's just us here taking care of you, Em." Patricia asked some follow-up questions about Emily's support system, and Marcus smoothly explained that he and Jessica provided all of Emily's care, with occasional help from extended family members who weren't regularly involved in her daily routine. He made me sound like a distant relative who occasionally dropped by, not the woman who had been Emily's primary caregiver for 30 years. When Patricia finally left and I emerged from the basement, Emily ran to hug me with obvious relief. "Mama Gail, Marcus said you went to see friends, but I was worried you left like Daddy did." The innocent reference to her father's death and her fear that I might disappear the same way shattered what remained of my composure. I held Emily close while staring at Marcus over her head, finally seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in 3 years. That night, after Emily had gone to bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and facing some hard truths I'd been avoiding for months. The humiliation of hiding in the basement had stripped away all my rationalizations and self-doubt. I was being systematically erased from Emily's life, and I'd been complicit in my own disappearance. I spent the following days quietly observing and researching, approaching the situation like the investigation it had become. I began by reviewing Emily's financial documents, which I'd helped organize when she'd first moved in. What I discovered made me feel sick. Marcus had indeed taken control of Emily's disability benefits, but instead of using them transparently for her care, he'd been redirecting the money into a separate account that funded household expenses far beyond Emily's needs. Emily's monthly benefits were substantial, designed to cover her housing, food, medical needs, and social activities. But Marcus had been using the money to pay for family vacations, home improvements, and luxury purchases that had nothing to do with Emily's care. Meanwhile, Emily's own recreational activities and social programs had been eliminated under the guise of better care. I made careful copies of financial records and began documenting the pattern of isolation Marcus had imposed on Emily. I created a timeline of all the people and services that had been cut from Emily's life since we'd moved in. The pattern was unmistakable. Anyone who might advocate for Emily independently or question the care arrangements had been systematically excluded. During my research, I contacted the County Disability Rights Office and learned about Emily's legal rights as an adult with disabilities. I discovered that she had the right to choose her own living situation, maintain relationships with family and friends, and participate in community activities. More importantly, I learned that, as her mother, I had standing to advocate for her rights if she was being isolated or financially exploited. The most crucial call I made was to Sarah Chen, Emily's social worker, whom I'd been prevented from seeing. When I explained the situation, Sarah's concern was immediate and professional. "Mrs. Thompson, what you're describing sounds like potential financial abuse and isolation, which are serious forms of elder and disability abuse," Sarah said. "Emily has the right to maintain relationships with her family and to have input into her own care decisions. No one, even well-meaning family members, has the right to cut her off from her support system or misuse her benefits." Sarah agreed to schedule an unannounced visit to assess Emily's situation and determine whether her rights were being protected. But she warned me that I needed to be prepared for potential conflict with Marcus when the truth came out. Over the next week, I began preparing Emily for what might be a difficult conversation. Without directly criticizing Marcus, I started asking Emily about her own preferences and desires. Did she miss her friends? Would she like to participate in activities outside the house? How did she feel about having visitors? Emily's responses confirmed what I'd suspected. She missed Linda terribly and couldn't understand why she wasn't allowed to see her friend anymore. She wanted to go back to art therapy because she loved painting and missed the other students in her class. She felt confused about why so many people had stopped caring about her, not understanding that they'd been deliberately excluded from her life. Most heartbreaking of all, Emily admitted that she sometimes felt like she was too much trouble because Marcus often seemed stressed when dealing with her needs. The confident, happy woman I'd known was being slowly worn down by subtle but persistent messages that she was a burden rather than a beloved family member. Armed with this information and the support of Sarah Chen, I began planning my confrontation with Marcus. I wasn't going to hide in any more basements or accept any more explanations about what was best for Emily. It was time to fight for my daughter's rights and my own dignity. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Just 10 days after my humiliating basement experience, Sarah called to say she'd be conducting a surprise welfare check on Emily the following Tuesday. This time, when Marcus started to suggest I make myself scarce, I was ready for him. "Mom, maybe you should run some errands while Sarah is here," he said casually. Tuesday morning, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "No, Marcus," I said firmly, standing straighter than I had in months. "I'm staying right here. Emily is my daughter, and I have every right to be present during her welfare check." Marcus's face flushed with anger. "Mom, we've discussed this. Too many people involved in Emily's care creates confusion and complications. The only confusion here is why you've been lying to Emily's healthcare providers about who lives in this house and who provides her care," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Jessica emerged from the kitchen drawn by our raised voices, but for the first time she looked uncertain, rather than automatically supportive of her husband. "What's going on?" Emily asked, appearing in the hallway with obvious anxiety about the tension she could feel. "Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart," I said, going to her side. "Sarah is coming to visit today, and I'm going to be here with you just like I should be." Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "If you make a scene today, if you jeopardize Emily's placement here, I will never forgive you, and Emily will suffer the consequences." "The only person who should be worried about consequences is you," I said quietly but clearly. "I know about Emily's benefits money." "Marcus, I know how you've been using her disability payments for your own expenses while cutting her programs and activities. I know about every friend and service provider you've excluded from her life. The color drained from Marcus's face. You don't understand the complexities of managing Emily's care. I understand that you've been committing financial abuse while isolating my daughter from her support system, I said. And that ends today. When Sarah arrived 30 minutes later, I was sitting in the living room with Emily helping her organize the artwork she wanted to show the social worker. Marcus hovered nearby, clearly agitated but unable to object without creating the kind of scene he'd been threatening me about. Sarah's assessment was thorough and eye-opening. She spoke privately with Emily about her living situation, her happiness and her desires for social activities and independence. She reviewed the financial arrangements and asked detailed questions about Emily's daily routine and care. When Sarah asked Emily directly about her relationship with me, Emily's face lit up with genuine joy. Mama Gail is the best. She helps me with everything and makes me feel safe. I don't know why some people don't want her around anymore. Marcus attempted to interrupt with explanations about care transitions and independence building, but Sarah redirected him firmly. I need to hear from Emily directly about her own preferences and experiences. The conversation continued for over 2 hours with Sarah taking careful notes and asking increasingly pointed questions about the changes in Emily's social activities and support services. When she asked to review financial records, Marcus's discomfort became obvious to everyone in the room. By the end of the visit, Sarah had a clear picture of the situation. Before leaving, she had a private conversation with Marcus that I could hear from the kitchen. Mr. Thompson, based on my assessment today, there appear to be some concerns about Emily's isolation from her previous support network and questions about the management of her benefits. I'll be conducting a full investigation and will expect complete financial transparency and a plan for restoring Emily's access to her previous social services. The immediate aftermath of Sarah's visit brought swift and dramatic changes to our household. Within a week, Marcus was required to provide full accounting of Emily's benefits and restore her access to all the services and activities that had been eliminated. The investigation revealed that he diverted nearly $15,000 of Emily's money for household expenses unrelated to her care. Marcus's initial reaction was anger and defensiveness. He accused me of destroying the family and putting Emily's security at risk. But when Jessica learned the full extent of his financial manipulation and saw the documented pattern of isolation he'd imposed on Emily, something shifted in their marriage. She began questioning decisions she'd supported and recognizing the control tactics she'd helped enable. I thought we were helping Emily by keeping things simple, Jessica admitted to me during a difficult conversation. I didn't realize Marcus was cutting her off from people who cared about her or using her money for our benefit. Within 2 weeks of the investigation's conclusion, Emily and I had moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment, specifically designed for people with disabilities and their caregivers. The transition was funded partially by the restitution Marcus was required to make and partially by Emily's accumulated benefits that should have been used for her enrichment all along. The change in Emily was remarkable and immediate. Within days of our move, Linda came for a visit, and Emily's joy at reuniting with her old friend brought tears to my eyes. We re-enrolled Emily in her art therapy sessions, and she threw herself into painting with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen in months. Her weekly social skills group welcomed her back with genuine celebration, and Emily began talking again about her goals and dreams for the future. For me, the transformation was equally profound. I'd rediscovered my voice as Emily's advocate and protector. I'd learned to distinguish between loving sacrifice and enabling abuse. Most importantly, I'd shown Emily that she deserved to have people fight for her rights and happiness, not just manage her existence. Marcus struggled with the new arrangements initially. Losing control over Emily's benefits meant significant financial adjustments for his family, and he had to confront the reality that his protection of Emily had actually been restriction and exploitation. But gradually, as he saw Emily flourishing in her new environment. He began to understand the damage his approach had caused. Our relationship required careful rebuilding. I had to set clear boundaries about how Marcus could be involved in Emily's life while ensuring that he understood his role as her brother, not her controller. Family dinners happened on neutral ground, and visits were planned around Emily's preferences and comfort level, rather than Marcus's convenience. The legal and financial consequences Marcus faced served as a wake-up call not just for him but for Jessica as well. Their marriage went through a difficult period, as Jessica grappled with how she'd been complicit in the situation. They entered counseling to address the control dynamics in their relationship and to rebuild trust that had been damaged by Marcus's deception. Emily's financial independence was restored under proper oversight, with a professional care coordinator helping her learn to manage her benefits appropriately. She began participating in a supported decision-making program that helped her understand her rights and make informed choices about her own life. Most remarkably, Emily began advocating for herself in ways I'd never seen before. She started speaking up about her preferences for activities, expressing her feelings more directly, and even educating others about disability rights. The woman who had been made to feel like a burden discovered that she had value and agency in her own life. Looking back now, 6 months later, I can see this experience as a painful but necessary journey toward understanding the difference between love and control, between protection and imprisonment. The humiliation of being forced to hide in that basement became the catalyst for reclaiming not just my own dignity, but Emily's rights and autonomy as well. The healing process hasn't been simple or quick. There were nights in our new apartment when I lay awake, replaying all the signs I'd missed, all the moments when I'd chosen peace over advocacy, all the times I'd prioritized Marcus's comfort over Emily's needs. The guilt of having been complicit even unknowingly in my daughter's isolation weighed heavily on my conscience. But Emily's resilience and capacity for forgiveness taught me about the power of moving forward rather than dwelling in regret. She never blamed me for the difficult period we'd endured together. Instead, she expressed gratitude that I'd finally stood up for both of us when it mattered most. "Mama Gail, you saved us," she told me one evening as we worked on a jigsaw puzzle in our cozy living room. "You made sure I could see my friends again and do the things that make me happy." Her simple words carried more healing than any therapy could have provided. They reminded me that love sometimes requires difficult choices, uncomfortable confrontations, and the courage to disrupt false peace in service of genuine justice. My relationship with Marcus has slowly evolved into something more honest, though it will never return to the uncomplicated trust I once felt. He's had to confront the reality that his need for control and financial benefit had poisoned his care for his sister. The process has been humbling for him, but I've seen genuine remorse and effort to change. Jessica and I have developed an unexpected friendship through this crisis. She's admitted that Marcus's controlling tendencies extended beyond Emily to their own marriage, and she's been working to establish healthier boundaries in all her relationships. Sometimes the people who seem to benefit from dysfunctional systems are actually trapped by them too. Emily has become involved in a disability advocacy group where she shares her story to help other families recognize the signs of financial abuse and isolation. Her courage in speaking publicly about her experience has helped several other people identify and escape similar situations. Watching her transform from a victim of control into an advocate for change has been one of the most proud moments of my life as her mother. I've also connected with a support network of other parents and family members who faced similar challenges in protecting their loved ones with disabilities. These relationships have taught me that my experience with Marcus wasn't unique, and that family members are unfortunately common perpetrators of disability abuse precisely because their control is less likely to be questioned or challenged. The financial restitution Marcus provided allowed Emily and me to create a life that truly centers her preferences and goals. She's taking art classes at the community college, volunteering at a local animal shelter, and maintaining friendships that bring her joy and growth. Her world has expanded rather than contracted, and she's developing confidence and skills I never knew she possessed. For myself, I've learned that being a good mother doesn't mean being silent when my children make harmful choices. It means loving them enough to hold them accountable when they hurt others, even when those others are vulnerable family members who can't always advocate for themselves. The lesson applies beyond just Emily's situation to all the relationships in my life. The deepest lesson from this experience has been understanding that dignity and respect aren't privileges that can be earned or lost based on someone's abilities or circumstances. Emily deserved to have her voice heard, her relationships honored, and her financial resources protected, not because she could demand these things herself, but because they are fundamental human rights. My job as her mother wasn't to manage her existence efficiently, but to ensure she could live with autonomy and joy. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd never been forced into that basement, if I'd continued accepting Marcus's explanations and gradually allowing Emily's world to shrink further. The thought terrifies me because I realize how easy it would have been to let the situation continue to prioritize family harmony over justice, to confuse enabling with loving. That moment of humiliation, as painful as it was, became the wake-up call that saved both Emily and me from a future of increasing isolation and control. It taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to hide, refuse to be silenced, and refuse to let others diminish the people you care about most. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where keeping peace in your family meant compromising your values or someone else's well-being? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about how we can balance family loyalty with standing up for what's right. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to find your voice and fight for dignity. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family courage and personal transformation. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most difficult conversations lead to the most important changes. I wish you all the strength to speak up when silence would be easier, and the wisdom to know when love requires courage rather than compliance.